It's a beautiful moment.
I hate starting this. Hi, I'm Heather Clark.
I'm Nikki Triumfo. How are you guys doing? We're live. It's just cool. Yeah. Okay.
Let's do this thing.
Yeah.
So, beats.
This is session 6 of 51st chapters, how to make yours stand out. We're talking about emotional beats today. And Heather's just going to start us right up, and I'm going to check the chat because I'm confident I can do it.
No, we can find it today. We can find you. You can tell us who you are. We will say hello. So basically, when I started thinking about beats, I couldn't really separate it from the idea that we've got this whole cause and effect thing. And it's just important that your story should have things cause other things. That's what you need to be working on. So don't have a bunch of random events. Don't have, then this happened, then this happened, then I looked at a tree, then it was cool. You know, like you've got to have stuff happening and leading to other things. And so my little random snippet of life this morning, I was like, I got up this morning and then I showered, then I ate some cheese, then I volunteered at the school, then I made meals and did laundry, I put my kids to bed, then I binge watched Parenthood on Netflix, then I went to sleep. Anyway, that's not interesting, and then we don't write books about that. So you're not trying to get at a random snippet of life. And so if it doesn't really have a cause and effect relationship to other things in the story, it's not part of your story.
Right.
Unless it's color or...
Yeah, but even then, you're just going to color what's
right. Like you could,
story. But
you know what I'm saying? Like someone can be eating their cereal in a scene that's all about cause and effect. So
everything I used to write, my writing group partner Kathleen would say to me, "This is such great slice of life writing," and I would always be like, "It's like a YA."
What does that mean?
To, like, you know, I was thinking it was like high concept YA. And she wasn't thinking that.
She's like I just got to view your character taking a shower and
well, not taking a shower. Thanks.
Oh,
thank you.
Sorry for
more
that.
Like
image.
The breakfast. More like the breakfast.
Okay, so what we want to do, seriously, if you're looking at your story and you write me a one-page synopsis, it should, if you're gonna just bullet all the events, just bullet them. Just put the events, this. If you can't add in the middle, if you can't add, so and so, such and such happens, or therefore such and such happens, or but such and such happens. If you can't add those things, now I think I mentioned in the handouts, or at least I tried to before we edited me down to something you can maybe possibly get through in 2 hours. Right. But the point being that, like, if you're writing a big multi-arc novel, you're linking words here. You're therefore, and so only has to carry through one storyline. Oh, you can also have the word meanwhile. Do you know what I'm saying? Before this other scene is happening, but it's best if ultimately they collide and cause some of the end. So, and then here's the other thing with that: your B story or your something on the side can be like a random event that happens. You know what I mean? That causes, because you do have to have some random event. I mean, clearly life has to sort of play a part. Right.
Coincidence can happen as long as it's like foreshadowed, or as long as it happens early, or as long as like the whole point of the story is the effect of that coincidence or something like that. Coincidences solving problems are much, much, much more problematic for plot than coincidences that start problems. Right. Coincidences can start problems all the time, and that's not a big deal because that happens in real life all the time.
Right. Agree. So, all right. So I guess what I just want to say is do this. Sit down, write your story out, try and do your and so's. And if you have a bunch of and thens, fix it. To stop at that and then and think, what else could happen that could be caused by a conflict that's central to the main message of the story.
Right.
Do you want to talk about scene and sequel?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which will lead to, did we get that? Choices. Oh, that's right. Oh, that is one thing. I feel like we chose this topic, even though we've talked about emotional beats before. I was telling you this. We always probe each other first. But when I read the first chapter contest that I happened to judge, it was small, but still the main problem that I saw with the characters is that I would describe them as very reactive. Things were happening to them constantly. There was this huge world, and they were just like drinking from the fire hose of stuff happening to them. But they didn't act very often. Right. They just, and they constantly were explaining to the reader what's going on. So all this stuff is hitting me, and I'm drinking from the fire hose, and here's why it's happening. And then we just go for pages and pages and pages of that.
And basically all you're doing is just unloading all this drama, sadness, the situation. It's so hard. And I feel that, and I want that in your first chapter. But if they don't actually make any choices to act for themselves.
It does feel like a snippet of life. It does feel like you're meeting somebody at the aisle of the grocery store and they just tell you some things and you're like, oh, gee.
Wow, your life sucks. I'm going to go home and be grateful for my own.
I know. You're like, you don't really feel like you were told a story. You may have felt like you've met a character, especially if the voice is fun or peppy or whatever, then you may have felt like
you know, I would say especially for a first chapter contest, but let's be honest. A first chapter contest is what you're in no matter what you're doing. If you're writing a book, even if you're sending it to an agent, you're sending it to a reader, you're sending it to whoever you're sending it to.
Absolutely.
That first chapter has to hook me, and the only way it's going to hook me is I have some sense of, wow, this character has this crazy conflict going on, and they are going to do this thing. What the heck? I'm going to follow them.
Yeah. How are they going to get out of this?
Yeah, don't just show me a kid in high school. I don't want to read that book. That book is free on Kindle always. And it's really boring.
Okay, so not and. Not. The word is not and then. Yes.
Yeah. So you're not saying good. Okay, because I forgot I have two copies here.
Okay, so you can do that exercise if you want to. Scene structure. We're talking about scene and sequel, which I know we've talked about before. Make sure that your scenes are goal-oriented. We're just following the handout here. If your POV character has a goal, then you want, well, your POV character needs to have a goal. I guess what I'm saying is, remember we talked before about how there was there can be the Titanic going in one direction and there's something else going in the other direction. At some point, your character needs to decide that she can try to do something about that. And if she only watches the event happen in the first chapter, then it's less powerful than if she has or even you can foreshadow that she has a plan. For example, I'm writing a story right now about this girl she's a computer hacker, and she's hacking into this girl's website who's a thief at their school. And all she's doing is she's just tagging this website with the word thief, just as a hoax. But we can see in her larger story that there are these drug cartels that are going after her parents. And she foreshadows for the reader, I could go after anyone. It's not just this girl that I could go after who's a thief at our school. I could go after, child slavery things or whatever. I could go after any website that's proposing that we do anything bad. And as we see the larger story set up, all we see at the end of the chapter is that somebody in her family is kidnapped. But we already know, the reader knows she's going to be hacking into that drug cartel. She has a way in already, and we've already established that. And she's going to be like a hacktivist against this drug cartel.
Awesome.
So, I know, right?
Well, I mean, right there, I'm going to follow that girl. I would love to know all the crap that's going to happen to her because of her choice. The
chapter hints, it foreshadows at it. Even though we don't have time to get to her choice, the first chapter needs to foreshadow what her choice is.
Right, and what if all we saw in that first chapter was, my mom and dad were kidnapped, my mom and dad were kidnapped, it's so sad, I hate my life.
Right.
That's not promising me anything.
And also,
it's promising me hopefully that they come back.
And you don't want to do it in the wrong order too. See, so if you have them kidnapped first, and then have her process that, and then have her decide I can become a hacktivist, that is not as dramatic. When you see the event of the kidnapping, you get the full story downloaded into your brain in one solid picture.
Because you already know what her goal is, right?
You already know she has the capability to be a hacktivist.
This person is.
She has inside knowledge.
Yes.
Just enough inside knowledge of this drug cartel and some of their electronic footprint. She knows she could go after him, and she says to her friend, joking, she's like, yeah, but you wouldn't really go after him. Well, of course not. You don't hold a gun up to someone who's pointing an Uzi at you. You know what I mean? You don't do that kind of crap. And then
and now we know she'll have to.
As soon as we see the kidnapping, we know.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
That's coming together. That's good.
It'll be fun. Anyway, so obviously you need to have conflict. You need to have what they want versus what the world is wanting. I didn't make sure that I wrote these words in.
And I just did. So here's the thing. On the scene part, we have if you don't know what they want, you just have random events. So that's critical that they have a goal. And then specifically that they have a goal in the scene. Not just a whole novel goal, but what is their goal right now? And it's usually related to the main goal for the whole novel. Like exactly here, she's got someone who kind of is like, yeah, I could go after these people. I feel like I can do this interesting thing. That's not going to be the whole novel goal. Clearly, it's going to be getting her parents back and saving them and all the things. but we don't know that yet, but that's okay.
Right.
Because she has a scene goal, so she feels active. Anyway, so she has that, and then heighten the tension by increasing the stakes. See, okay, Nikki, what Nikki shared is perfect. By increasing the stakes for your character to accomplish the scene goal. So her character has a scene goal like, I'm going to take down bad people. It's going to be awesome. Oh, your parents are kidnapped. Stakes. Like, my parents are going to die if I don't do this.
Technically, it's your Uncle Nate that's going to die. I'm just saying. Her parents are Border Patrol agents, and that's why they're targeting the family. So,
but basically, Nikki is amazing because she just did that for us right there. And so increase those stakes. And then have the bigger or more intense the obstacle, then the stronger your scene. And you'll notice I put scene all in caps here. Anywhere that it says scene all in caps, that means a scene type of scene, the goal-oriented scene.
Oh, right.
And then sequel, because it gets really confusing when you're like, well, this is still a scene, but it's anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So disaster, the hook at the end of the scene is the disaster, and it is like the punchline. So basically, and Nikki used to say that to me all the time. She's like, well, at the end, your scene just kind of ended. You put a period, we turn the page, it's over. So don't do that. The moment your character fails to accomplish their goal in this kind of scene, you're out. Right. They fail to accomplish it, or the moment we see the disaster that's going to make everything change, or when they triumph, but we know it's really bad. Yes, I like that when that happens. That's a very typical 3/4 mark of the book. So we get to that 3/4 mark and we see this false triumph, and then we see on the back end of that, the very next page, we get the sense of how false it is, and that leads us right into the climax. And the disaster at the end of the thing can literally be the guy who likes me looked at me, and then you realize that and then you just have a one-liner about how she's way too insecure to make that happen. Right. Or about, whatever it is, whatever your stakes, it doesn't have to be.
The stakes depend a lot. Like, some people like high stakes and some people don't. My husband's watching right now a TV show about, it's like this alternate world. World War II has, the Germans won. This is a thing. Like, it's a genre. The Germans have won World War II. The Japanese won. America is taken over by Germany/Japan, and X many years have gone by, and it's this alternate universe, and now they need to break free. But it's a little heavy for me, and sometimes I just don't really want it to be that heavy. Right. So whatever the stakes are, whatever your reader decides they like best.
Right. And in a way, like romantic novel, frequently it can just be, are we getting texts about this? Yeah. I keep looking for the chat.
I know. No one's chatting. I swear to this.
They probably are, because they always are.
Why am I so? Anyway, whatever. We're just gonna keep going. 5 watching now. 5. Come on, guys. I know this is it. They just haven't chatted.
We're in the right
These
place.
must be our introverted watchers. These are our most like.
Yeah, we don't have James here to be like, okay. Yo, people, it's comedy hour.
It's okay.
Look, there he is.
Hey, that's Marcus. Hola, Marcus. Oh, and Sabrina! Yay!
Okay, cool.
Okay,
glad you guys are here.
We love y'all. Thank you so much. You're the best.
Okay, cool. So in a sequel scene, so here's the thing, and this is the whole thing about cause and effect. So we have like our goal, conflict, disaster, ends that scene. The next scene does not pick up with some random thing that has nothing to do. I did this to you all the time in my Tessa novel. Yeah. Like, I had this one scene where the girl who's like so stressed and so out of control, she chops off all of her hair. Yes. And we know, and then she mails it to the guy.
She mails
it to her boyfriend.
To her ex-boyfriend. It's pretty rad.
And we just don't
and then nothing.
Again.
Nothing.
No.
She just goes to school the next day.
She just goes to school. No one says, like, I mean, they say, like, nice haircut. Yeah. But there's nothing. So, like, the new version of that book, we've got Tessa, like, well, I don't even want to do spoilers because that book might come out someday.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, now they're
right. Totally.
So with your sequel scene, you want to see that part?
Okay.
And I wrote it down.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I should have written them in myself. So a sequel, and this is like I'm going to talk directly to the camera. This is how important this is. A sequel is when they make a decision. When it's a small thing, like I know what you didn't do it, you dork. If I throw this pen in your face, you're supposed to try to catch it.
No, I didn't realize it was coming.
But anyway, that's such an immediate reaction. Like, if you see something coming at you that you're trying to
unless you have no reflexes and you're dead to the world.
So if I throw that at her, it's so automatic to try to open it. The closet door. Mike wants me to close the closet door. Sorry, he's like, you didn't clean the closet. Close the closet door. Sorry. We just have to
please forgive Nikki's really gross closet.
I want to like show them the room. It's actually like way cleaner than usual. But anyway, when a reaction is automatic, you don't have to take us through all the steps of how to decide and what we humans tend to go through when we're making a decision and on all of that.
I pull a gun, you put your hands up. We don't have to be like, wow, someone is pointing a gun at me. I have a dilemma. I have no good options. What am I going to do? I actually read a book. It's really, really good. It's called First Circle by some Russian guy. I can't remember how to say it. Solzhenitsyn or something like that. Solzhenitsyn. But anyway, it's really good. But the whole thing basically is there's a scene. It starts with a scene. And the Russians, he's in a Russian prison for being a subversive, you know, someone who's like against the government, which he wasn't, but whatever. So he's in prison for life. And they bring him in and they say, we want you to be a informant. We want you to be like working for us, and you have to turn in one person a week who's a subversive. And they take him from the prison and they like just kill him, basically. And so he's like, this is my end. This could like, I could live in this prison now forever. And I won't get turned in, and I'm like one of them, but I have to turn in people. And he's like, well, I could turn in bad people who like, you know, try to kill other people, or who actually do bad stuff, or who actually seem murderous or whatever. And but then he's like, but I still have to I get to choose whether they live or they die. And the entire book is a sequel. The entire book. There's nothing else. It's like 600 pages. He just thinks. And he doesn't make his decision. And has a dilemma and thinks.
Yep. And in the
middle of the second Divergent book, there are like 8 sequel scenes in a row.
Yeah.
And that's when you suddenly put the book down. You were so compelled before, and you put it down and you kind of go to sleep. I did fall asleep because they just thought about how sucky it was and how many no options they had.
I think that for a literary book, it works better.
Yeah.
Does that
in a high concept, like fast-paced book? Dude, you get one sequel scene and then they got to be working on something else.
Right. I totally agree with that. So, but in this book, it was a very literary slice of life. You just got to see what it was like to be in a Russian prison. Not so great, turns out. And then at the end, there's the sequel. So for literary, it's not as big of a deal, and you can really hold on to it. And like the whole thing is that like
this big existential debate.
Well, it's who he is, and he talks with his friends, and he does, you know, he thinks about, he comes into a new scene, if you will, where there are characters there and there is an interaction there, and he has a new perception about it because of this decision that he has to make. Does that make sense? So stuff happens.
Right.
But there's not that's the whole story. It's just his life for a few days, and then he makes his decision. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. But that shows what a big
So it can be quick. Your sequels can be quick, but basically, and they can also be implied. Sometimes the sequel is the next scene is another goal-driven scene, and we get that she made that choice.
Right. Well, sorry, I wanted to make another point about this. Sorry. So sequels can be long, they can be short, whatever, but anytime we have a motivation, like if I throw a pen at her, she does make a decision. If the decision is quick and the reader never sees it, the reader doesn't see it as all that important. Right. If you never show them the process, then you have a pure action book. So I talked about the pure sequel book. You have a more pure action book.
If it's like goal, conflict, disaster, goal, conflict, disaster.
Right, and even then, you'll notice that there are sequels, even like the Maze Runner kinds of books.
And that's where we get to breathe for a minute sometimes.
Yeah. But we also get to kind of get to know the character.
Right.
I mean, if it's literally just a chase scene for the entire book, I mean, I'm sure there's a genre out there that allows for that, but it's less typical.
But your next scene, when you're thinking about plotting your book, your next scene is not what happens next. What would happen next? Although that's what you're doing.
Right.
Your next scene, the way that you work, and you might even, here's the fun bit. If you've written a whole book and you didn't know about scene and sequel, you might be able to keep almost all of the events from your book. Events are not what makes this. It's the way you work the tension in the scene.
Well, you might be able to,
but
you might
not be able to.
Because
but I've been able to keep a lot of things by saying, oh no, wait, she's reacting to this.
A scene is when something happens to her.
Right.
A sequel is when she decides to make something else happen to the world.
Out of the disaster.
Yeah.
It's out of this, and the disaster's not a true disaster if we need to have no good option.
But it's a conversation between her and the world.
Right.
The world pushes on her, she pushes on the world. The world pushes on her, she pushes on the world. That is the typical novel style. And if you don't have that, if you have the world pushing on her, pushing on her, pushing on her, she reacts, and then there's this climax where she trips and the villain dies somehow because she kicked a knife into him. She never made any decision ever, but it's okay because she triumphed in the end.
No.
Lameness.
No, we would hate it. And so the end of that scene, you said, really a sequel must result in the decision. I almost don't care about the reaction dilemma. That can happen fairly quickly, but they must make a decision, and that decision is what fuels the next scene.
Exactly.
For that period.
And so that's why sometimes your plot, if you're not, sometimes like our characters aren't pushing back enough, and it can be pushing back in subtle ways. It can be pushing back by refusing to push back.
Right.
That it, you know, it can be very, okay.
Okay, we can, yeah, that was great.
Okay.
Small structure. Do you want to go into beats?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do we do it? I think we did fill it all in. Well, okay, no, the dilemma is no good options. Okay, and then the decision at the end, the hook at the end of the scene is your decision. And I will always say, there's no hook at the end of your scene. There's no hook. The hook at the end of every scene, honestly, could be your disaster or fake triumph or revelation.
Yes.
Followed by your decision at the other.
And revelation can be like if it's a mystery thing.
Exactly.
Like
if they're solving a mystery, they find out
they
the
like
thing.
find some clue.
Right, which is going to be a new motivation rather than the disaster.
Exactly. That's what pushes them forward. It was their own thing that pushed them forward. Right. But yeah. Okay. I will get a copy of this with the words in just in case you miss it. Because I have this like obsession with making sure you know what the words are.
Well, because I know we did take out the more important words. That was the plan.
Right. But we'll make sure that you get them so we don't have to stress about them so much because I know we can't just show it to you. Because we want to get to the samples. So let's keep going.
Okay. Beats are reactions. So that's the thing. So here's the deal. So we've got a book and it's composed literally. I use Scrivener. I hope you use Scrivener. If you don't use Scrivener, you'll be so happy if you ever do.
Whatever. I don't use
She doesn't use Scrivener, but it's the best. But anyways, in my Scrivener, it's really fun because down the side of the binder, I see every scene and they're color coordinated, green or purple. Green is a goal-oriented scene and a purple is the sequel reaction. Sometimes both are in the same scene. That's yellow. But anyway, so I like color coordinate those as I go through my plotting before I do it. And I have all of that and I don't know why I'm even, the point is, you can plot your whole novel in scene, sequel, scene, sequel. And that's how I did my last one. It was my final plot. Yeah, it's fine. That was my final plotting thing. So I did a couple of other paradigms, but my final thing was to make sure that everything follows. Right. And anything that doesn't really fit in that doesn't get to go in the book. Right. But so when you finish doing that, you can do the same thing with your scene. You look at your scene, and you know what I would even do sometimes? Like I would have my scene, and off to in the notes section of that scene, I would have goal, conflict, disaster. I'd have it written in, and I would write for myself, what is the goal? What is getting in the way of it? What is going to be the problem at the end? And then I know what my scene is. But even that done, so this awesome article that we referred you to in the resources section on advanced fiction writing really summarizes like Dwight Swain and also, is it Bingham?
Yeah,
Jack Bingham on scene and sequel. It really summarizes that, but it also talks about motivation reaction units. And that basically means that your entire novel is all scene and sequel. It's just these fine little things. Everything should lead to the next thing.
Right. So what she's saying is it's like, imagine you went into a room full of beautiful big crystals and you looked at those crystals under a microscope and you actually see that molecularly, I can never talk.
In the
molecular level, they are actually composed of small crystal structures that grow in a certain way. And that if you take that crystal substance and like melt it down or whatever it is you do and have it grow again, it will grow in exactly the same way. And it actually follows the same pattern. So the large scale look at it mirrors the small.
And we don't use the exact same words, especially on the handout, but like if you consider the fact that really all you're doing is you're giving someone a motivation, which the motivation
is like the goal
equals the disaster, equals the thing that spurred to enter, right? But so the motivation is
motivation is little, so that would be like me throwing
the pen. That's the motivation, right?
Little, something
so
little.
in the moment Nikki says, Heather, why don't you go? Okay,
then
she says, Heather, why don't you go? That's my motivation. I have to do something now.
Right.
So that's the distinct stimulus to me. It's specific. It can be seen, heard, felt, tasted, or smelled. It's a stimulus.
Right.
And then
realized if it's like a clue.
Right.
Like if you realize, oh my gosh, Johnny's the killer.
Totally.
So that kind of that.
It doesn't have to be dialogue. It can be, but yeah, basically something realized, I guess, is another thing. So it can be an internal sudden click or whatever.
Right.
Most effective if your descriptions can make your reader actually experience it with them in a visceral way. That's the blank there in that one.
Right.
And then for reaction, the character reacts to the motivation by doing one or more things. Now, you can beat your novel to death because we're about to talk. The reactions are the beats. And if your writing group ever says to you, oh, you're missing some beats here, then you have a really good writing group. And they like have studied a long time, because what we did to my friend forever, she'd come and we go, it's just not quite emotionally spot on.
Right.
It's almost there. Or like Nikki read one of my chapters back before we kind of really honed in on this concept. And she just said, your character's kind of a brat. And she doesn't really like, it's this pregnant girl whose mother's forcing her to have an abortion. And Nikki's like, I don't get it. She's just uniformly mad. I'm like, her mother's forcing her to have an abortion. And Nikki goes, yeah, but that's not on the page. And what she meant was, you don't have any beats.
Right.
You are missing every moment where your character reacts in a meaningful way.
Okay, I'm going to say what I felt about Tessa, which was, and this makes sense. People do this all the time. Tessa was mad about situation A, her mom. Tessa was rude to the girl in the waiting room.
Right.
B. Now, people do that all the time, but when your readers see your character be rude to this crazy lady for no reason, they're going to think that girl's a jerk.
Right.
But when they kind of get a sense of your visceral reaction, when this lady spoke, if I saw her tense and get
feel it,
and if there were anything, and it's best if you don't make it like hit us over the head.
Tessa was sad. She was emotional,
and my
because
mom
she was going to have an abortion.
Like, but you're going to use your literary tools, and you're going to be awesome, and you're going to have something that harkens from this story, even if it's just the color of the fingernails here. She notices the color of the fingernails there, and we're instantly right back in this situation. When she is rude to that girl, we know she wants to be rude to her mom.
We feel the pain.
And we are like, dude, I hear you. I want to be rude to that mom too. And all of a
poor
sudden,
Tessa, yeah, she's gonna be, but I'm with her.
We're not, angry at her for the way she's acting. And if we could see people's motivation units inside their person live,
we'd probably like almost everyone.
We'd probably like them a lot more, especially like 15-year-olds. They're really classically bad at expressing why they're doing the crap they're doing, because a lot of times they don't know. They don't have to process that themselves, And so it just looks like they're just lame.
Right.
But actually, there's usually a good reason for why people are doing
right. And here's an interesting way to look at it. So you don't always have to show a reaction in these little motivation reaction units. You don't always have to show them all. Sometimes you can have stimulus, sometimes you can.
Yeah.
But,
especially with action scenes.
Right. Don't slow me down by giving me, and don't give me all 4 parts of what could possibly be a reaction. So we'll talk about this. But you can do the 4 parts. You can do one of the parts. I typically want to rely on 1. I typically like to use 1. I sometimes will hit 2. I think that bad writing relies on 3 or 4 consistently, and I don't like it.
Right.
But the thing is, we're going to get to what those reactions.
Bad writing tells you.
Right.
I think bad writing says, this lady reminds me of my mom, and so I'm going to be mean to this lady.
And I feel sad.
And I think good writing, gives us a visual of the mom or something, and then reminds us. Or gives us an essence of the mom, like the smell, the whatever, and then reminds us over here in a way that we are having that experience too.
Exactly. So here's an interesting thing about paragraph breaks. I'm very confused sometimes on paragraph breaks. Where'd you put them? I put them everywhere. I'm like, bullet.
I know, that's how I write too.
Bad. But here's the thing. This is a really pretty shorthand rule. You're whiplashing your character if you give them the motivation and the reaction in the same paragraph.
I do
always cut to a new paragraph for the new reaction.
I totally agree with that.
So yeah, you don't say
We're
that.
Go over this.
There's not like a paragraph that says like, the pen flew at Heather, she gasped. Like, she gasps. That's almost like a new line of dialogue. We have shifted to reaction.
Flew at her, paragraph break, she gasped.
Yeah, and please, you know what? I gasp a lot. Do word search for gasp and breathe and blink and all of those things because, but we'll get there. Okay, so every time you need, and here's the thing. If you want to know if you need a beat there, if you do something in your story that is startling to the reader, or that should be startling or hurtful or anything else to your character, if you don't show me something that shows me they felt something, they feel like a sociopath or like a blank slate or like it's not real. And even though, like, I was like, Nikki, how could you not feel her pain? Look at what I'm putting my character through. She's like, you're not showing me what she feels. You have to do that.
Right.
And I did that in the name of sparse writing, but it was not working.
Well, the problem too, though, is that we think in terms of stories. Humans think in terms of stories. And so actually, if you read a book on communication, one of the first things they're going to tell you to do is to try to figure out what the real story of the situation is by asking the other party, were you trying to make me mad when you did this? Or were you trying to, a lot of times we tell ourselves a story. Oh, they were doing that because they're upset that I won the game last night, blah, 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 blah. When actually, a lot of the times what we're telling ourselves is inaccurate. And as somebody is reading your character, what they are telling themselves about your character is likely inaccurate if you are not giving them enough to hold on to.
Exactly, exactly.
And then when they finally make some action that really proves that the reader's story has been wrong, the reader does not want to give up his or her own story. It's really hard to give up your own story. It actually really is. Even when you find out the person you're mad at really was trying to do something else, it's really hard to forgive them, even if you are certain that they actually did not have that motivation in the first place. It's really hard to give up. So when your reader finally figures out that that was not the motivation or the story,
it may be too late.
They may have already put the book down. They're done. They're just like, this is annoying. The girl keeps doing stuff, and they gotta get this sense. I'm always a step too late. I'm always figuring out what she was really thinking.
Yeah, wow.
Too late.
Yeah.
I keep,
Right. So there are 4 parts, and they have to be in order. You can use all 4 in a very specific time. If you're going to use all 4, it better be a momentous moment. Right. It better be a big deal. But
which you will have several times throughout the chapter.
And sometimes you are going to sometimes your readers will say, could you just expand here? Could you settle into this moment? This is a big moment, and you skipped right over it.
Wouldn't you say like 3 or 4 times per chapter you will want to do like all 4?
Absolutely.
But not like 7 or 9 times.
No.
But like 3 or 4
times there will be something that's like, oh, whoa, and it's at a reveal, or it's at something painful, or it's at something anyway.
Yeah.
So there are 4 parts. I almost always skip the first part because it's almost always telling. It's like, it was funny, the example that they used on that website, I thought was a terrible example. Sorry. I love this guy and I love his article. It's amazing. But what he basically said was like, okay, the lion sprung at Max. Okay, so like the lion springs. And then the first thing was a jolt of pure adrenaline shot through his veins. And I don't care about that. That's telling to me. Right. And it doesn't make me feel a jolt of pure adrenaline. Where I get the feeling is the visceral reaction. That's number 2. So the second one is the gasp, the step back, the gripping something, the blurting something out.
Do the primary reaction.
I almost never do either, but that was what he put, was a feeling. The feeling is first. You feel pain, you feel heat, you feel, do you know what I'm saying? Yes, it's the sensation. It's your initial sensation of the stimulus.
Okay. Because sometimes it isn't obvious. For example, if you reach out your hand, especially like in a fantasy novel, if you reach out your hand to the spindle that's going to put you to sleep because you're sleeping beauty, you do have to describe to the reader what that feels like, because maybe it's a silken sensation of amazingness. Maybe it's a prick. Maybe it's you're literally just telling
something. You're telling me what is the sensation of that motivation.
Yeah, you're actually literally telling them what it is.
She slaps me, I feel the pain.
That's why I think you should skip it for a lion.
You skip it for
because it's pretty odd.
The lions, yeah.
It's not like this is
and jolt of pure adrenaline. I think it's a mistake, actually, the order he puts that in. And I bless his heart, like he seriously is one of my idols. But I think it's a mistake, because when he says a jolt of pure adrenaline, to me, that's point of view character analyzing what's happening in his body, and that comes after the visceral reaction. We'll get there in a second. We get to conscious thought.
Well, he's just letting you know he's afraid of lions. But I think
I think his visceral reaction will demonstrate what's happening there. So, but you're right. Like when Nikki throws the pen at me, before I flinched, if you want to describe the impact of the pen hitting and what it felt like as a poke in the eyeball, that's first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there are times when your reader doesn't know the feeling.
Right.
If you have been, if you dived into water, and they have never done that, then you're going to have to describe that. It's just that so many times people have done the same things or similar enough.
Right. We have enough of a background. Really, right. But just be careful, because Nikki and I even, like, we're kind of from the same world. We still don't. But we're really different. And a lot of times she'll read mine and be like, what?
Why did she do that? And
she's like, she did that.
I love, she actually do. Water's a good one, because you love diving into water, and I really hate it.
Right, that's painful to you.
It's cold.
Right. Okay, so primary feeling is the first one. It gets skipped a lot, but if you need to, I mean, it's a good way to experience the moment, especially if you're digging in.
Right.
And then the second one is the reflex, and that's your visceral reaction, the step back, the blurting without thought.
Right.
Like Nikki said, often her visceral reaction is like, what?
Right.
Huh? Or something, where, because that is not conscious thought. That just
grab your arm
out.
Kidding me or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's the first. So you do your visceral reaction. I almost always want to hit that, but I sometimes miss. So then the next part would be rational thought or analysis. Oh, by the way, with the visceral reaction, sometimes in there, in that and the feeling, instead of saying gasped, clenched, something like that, you can use a metaphor, use something from your world, use something that...
I'll link to that because we've got Martine Levitt. I'll make sure that we...
Yeah, and that really, using that metaphor can really bless you. I know we gotta hurry.
But we gotta hurry.
Sorry. Okay, so then the third thing is rational thought and analysis. This is the moment when you're like, oh, I hate it when Nikki throws pens at me. That's in my head. And then my action can be speech, and it very often is speech, or I slap her.
Yeah, or you know,
I can do that.
Tackle people, whatever. Hop in the car.
Right.
Anything where you're going to then impose your will on the world that just imposed its will on you.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to even go into this whole non-POV speaks, blah, blah, blah. You can read that and analyze it. But then there's a list, and I'm not going to probably go over that either because we don't have time. We need to get into this, right?
Just as long as they know. Why don't we do this?
Why don't we do Patterson, by the way, and it's absolutely amazing ways to use language in order to give me. Most of these hit the visceral reaction or the feeling. Ways to awaken that, because you don't, seriously, I don't want to read gasp, clench, barf, stomach lurched, like, please. It doesn't, and this is something Martine Levitt taught me, it does not make the reader feel anything. It's so cliche.
It's very telling.
Yeah, if you're going to do a telling, cliched reaction and using internal organs and all of that, like, and even like, she gripped the table. I mean, it doesn't really get it done.
Sometimes.
But not all the time.
But I think it makes your book stronger, or I should say, it makes your book more literary to use things. There are certainly writers out there who rely almost entirely on
heart speeding and breath catching. And
I clenched this.
But you will find you have certain ones that you use all the time. Put those on your list of things to search, and we'll talk about that list next week. But put those on your list and search them. So that I had like 160 instances of the word breathe.
I am constantly looking at people. That's all I do.
They look. They
gaze.
My characters smile. They smile a lot.
Yeah, they do.
That always softens when they're being rude. Anyway, so just look through this list. It's got a really amazing pile of resources here. And the one other thing is my Christmas present. I forgot to put on the resource list.
Oh no,
my Christmas present from my husband was amazing, and it's the emotion thesaurus. And what it does is it goes through. You just open the page. It says surprise, and it lists physical cues that someone is surprised and other things. And so if you're just getting really bogged down and you can't think, it's honestly, as you're writing and you need to have a beat there, and if you think it's going to suck, put a symbol there. Have a symbol you always put, or write the word beat literally and move on.
Right.
And then come back later and you can fix it
and make it cool.
Make it varied and interesting.
Cool. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I love these ideas. Let's go ahead and go on to our first sample. And if we run into something that we don't feel like we've explained yet, then we'll come back to it. But going through the samples, I think, is going to explain this better than anything else we're doing at this point. So
when we get really close.
Okay. What we're going to do is, I practice this, okay? I don't want any mocking.
Right. So if it doesn't work, it's not Nikki's fault.
Okay, we just have to
we just saw a question, though.
Oh,
we back to the chat because it actually seemed...
Sorry, everybody. This is going to take a minute. Not that long, just like a minute. So afterthought, does it matter if the reaction or speak it comes? No, it doesn't matter.
Speech or action are the same. They equal the same thing because speech is action.
Right. So
the resource list is on the end of the handout. That's a good question, Jana. So it's the last thing down at the bottom. It says like,
yes. So what we're talking
articles,
about,
resources.
I'm going to show you.
Yep.
Right here, it has some more information, and then on the very last page, it just gives you lots of examples for how to boost these things and make them more entertaining than just telling. And then we have some articles there. And I'll give you that article about Martine Levitt. I know that she has an article, or somebody.
I have a 3-part series about it, but not about the metaphor. I don't.
I know somebody blogged about it because Martine Levitt talkght about it there, and there were a lot of people who really enjoyed that. And so I will try to find that for you. Otherwise, I'll just type it up myself.
Okay.
In Martine Levitt's words.
Well, I look really mad at you. I don't know, screen right there. Anyway.
Okay, look at this madness. Wait, look at this madness.
Is it going to really work?
I hope so. What did I just do? I hope.
Wait, do we still have the people's names in here? And do we want to?
I think so. Don't you want your name on there?
Hope you want your name on there.
Oh, you want your name on there?
The writing was great.
Be proud of
really
your work.
Fun.
Share. Here it is. Okay. So now you should be looking at what I am looking at.
Will someone please chat and say if you're actually seeing our screen share?
We can pretty much see that they're seeing it. But okay. So it's going to be hard for us to see your chats for a little while. So hang on. If you've got chats and we don't see them, just we'll get to them at the end. And also, sometimes we just can't do both. We can't look at your chats and answer the questions and manage our own selves. So if there's a question that we don't get to, I will always get to it in the wrap-up email. So hopefully we'll get to it. Okay, this is Wendy Jensen, and this is why I don't use Scrivener, because look at this awesomeness. Hyperlinks. If you don't use hyperlinks,
that's all built into Scrivener.
I know, but that's why it's also all built into Word. Microsoft Word. I'm just saying.
Scrivener friends.
Okay, so this is from Wendy Jensen, and Wendy, when I was first cutting and copying these, I was losing the formatting.
She didn't format it like a crazy person.
Yeah, so I didn't go fix that, but I did fix it here. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the entire thing. Then we're going to go through and track changes, and we're going to make some of the changes that we would see, and we're just going to try to mark the pages where we see what we think. Beat. Yeah, what we think. First, we're going to label it the way it is. So we're going to label what we think is motivation, what we think of as reaction, what we see as a visceral reaction. Then we're going to talk about the order that it's currently in. Then we're going to make suggestions for maybe changing it up. And some of you guys really nailed it, and I do have examples where I think there isn't much change that I would make, and I think the order came naturally in, and I think that's great. And there were others where I'm like, this is like perfect, but we just need to swap these two things, and
right.
And
Nikki pointed out we may disagree, which I think is instructive too.
Right. And also, here's the thing: if you have it out of order one time, there's a sample in here. They had it out of order 3 times in a row, the same out of order, and it was little. It was very little, but I felt like maybe changing that up might make it just flow a tiny bit better, and it's something to think about anyway. Okay, sample 1. This is Wendy Jensen's. The locked doorknob rattles a few times. Locking my door is pointless. The monster can always get in. The door whooshes open, and the feet thud closer to my bed. By the way, if you need backstory, then I'll give it to you, but I don't think you really do for this. So we've got a girl, she's in a bed. So she's worried that somebody's going to come in, or something is going to come in. I don't know if I'm breathing faster out of fear or lack of oxygen. The monster lets out an amused, stifled chuckle. Did you really think blankets and locking your door would hide you? Silly, foolish girl. The monster's gravelly voice fills my ears with terror. It tugs at my blanket cocoon. The limited safety vanishes with my hope. I hold on as tight as I can, which only ends with me catapulting to the floor with a painful thump. The monster is always stronger. Please, please, just leave me alone. I'm not going to let it see me cry. Tears press hard against the backs of my eyes. My foster mom probably just thinks I'm having another one of my nightmares. Those happen so frequently nowadays, no one ever comes to check on me. So fantastic putting us there, really good language. We can definitely feel her fear. This is not a situation that I would want to be in, for sure. So let's go ahead. This is we're just going to mark it. We're going to mark it for now. So this is going to put marks all over your thing, so just ignore it. But here's your motivation, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. And then what would you call this? I don't know if I'm reading. That's visceral reaction.
I think so.
And she is analyzing.
But it's actually, it's more analytical.
She is.
At this point, she's analyzing her feelings.
She is, but sometimes, again, it's like a stylistic thing.
She's combining.
Yeah, it's a stylistic
It's visceral reaction and analysis.
Okay, so then you have another motivation. Because we have the monster again. The monster is the one acting here.
Right.
Okay. It tugs at my blanket cocoon. My limited safety vanishes. So that
well, I think first, filling my ears with terror. There's your feeling. That's your first part of your reaction.
And then we've got another.
And then tugs, that's a new statement. That's a new moment.
This is all feeling. I think that whole thing is feeling.
No, but when it tugs at the blanket cocoon, that's the monster.
No, it doesn't actually.
Tugging.
No, because it was the.
No, it does actually tug because she holds on as tight as she can and she catapults to the floor. She's yanking on her blanket.
Now, Wendy, you might want to clear this up, but I think that's a metaphor. I think the voice tugs at the blanket cocoon.
I think it is the monster and it tugs because she actually flies to the floor. I think it has to be.
Oh, it has to be.
But it's not clear right there.
You're right. So I thought this was a metaphor, Wendy, when I read it, and I think Heather's right, so I'm going to go with Heather here. If you are doing a metaphor, by the way, you'll want to make sure that the details of the metaphor are clear. And that is hard to do, and sometimes your reader will miss tiny little nuances. Mm-hmm. And it's a balance. It's okay if they miss it sometimes. I'm not.
So, but this is a good example here, though, because that's a second motivation there with it tugs. And meaning that should be in its own new paragraph because you started any motivation
so I'm
there.
gonna go ahead
and we didn't have much reaction, so that's an interesting.
I thought this was all talking about the feeling.
And the reason you thought that is because it stayed in the paragraph.
Exactly. So we're gonna go ahead.
So that's a really good example.
See, it wasn't my fault.
Yeah, you can give it a new paragraph right there.
So let's just do that. So it tags my blanket.
But notice she totally did the right paragraph break after that. So she's
kind of.
Actually, no, that's motivation.
Here. This needs to be here.
Yeah, that's reaction there. The limited safety.
So what reaction would you say that? The limited safety vanishes with my
that's
hope.
Feeling I would say that's again or feeling. Analysis.
Yeah, I would still say that. I personally would that feeling, but whatever. I hold on as tightly as I can. Now that's our first action right there. It only ends with me catapulting to the floor with a painful thump. And again, that's kind of more motivation, but whatever. The monster is always stronger. Please leave me alone. We're still in action.
Still in action. She's still reacting.
Right. I'm not going to let it see
me. And she's
analyzing. Tears press hard in the back of my eyes.
And there's a visceral reaction.
I'm going to just put VR for visceral reaction. Or I'm going to do that. And guys, I know we're not going to have time to get through everything today, but we will have more time next week.
Yeah, because next week is super quick.
Super quick.
So we may go through more writing samples
next week.
It's literally
a checklist. So we will get to it next week if we don't get to it today. Tears press hard against the back of my eyes. My foster mom probably just thinks, sorry about that. This is my fault.
And that's analysis there after the visceral reaction.
I'm going to get rid of this text changes because somehow I have a paragraph break in there. That was my fault. My foster mom probably just thinks I'm having another one of my nightmares. So this is actually backstory.
Right, but it's analysis. She's having concrete thoughts.
I keep doing my
it's rational thoughts.
So I'm just going to put thought. I'm not going to put rational thought. We're not going to.
Yeah, that's fine.
I want it to attract because somehow. Okay. Okay. Those happen so frequently nowadays, no one ever comes to check on me. Again, that's thought. But I kind of think of it as backstory because it's not necessarily the kind of thought. It's a little bit. You know what? It is backstory, but I really like the fact that what you've done here is given us backstory in the thought. In the thought. That's perfect. No, that is perfect. You're not info dumping me. She's having right there a rational thought that is giving me more information of what's happening. That's true. That's true. We'll just call it thought. Okay. That's, I think, the best way possible. I do. I totally do. Okay. So motivation, visceral reaction, motivation, feeling, action, visceral reaction, thought. The only, let's focus on this right here. Right here, you've skipped some, but that's okay. You can skip it all that you want, but you have a motivation and a visceral reaction. You do not have a decision here, though. You are missing. Well, actually, you do a little bit. Look at this. Here's where one's missing. That's a decision. Locking my door is pointless. Oh, maybe not. Because it was. No, she's saying, okay, I'm hosed. So she's just thinking. She's analyzing. Right. She goes straight to analysis there. Sorry, for a second I thought she meant like, I'm not going to get up and lock my door, but no, that's not what she means. So if you were going to, and again, this is totally small ticky-tack stuff, but if you were going to put it in the order recommended there, ooh, I'm going to, should I undo track changes? I don't want to, but if you were going to put it in the order, you would take that and you would put it here. The doorknob rattles a few times. I don't know if I'm breathing faster out of fear or lack of oxygen. Locking my door is pointless. Here's what I'm going to say on that. Okay. I still don't believe that I don't know if I'm breathing faster is a visceral reaction because of the way that it's analysis. Okay. She's rational. And here's the thing. Okay, I'm assuming this is an instance of she's being sexually abused. Okay, that's what I think is happening here. Right. The doorknob rattles a few times. What is she experiencing? Okay, either that feeling, that moment when literally it seizes her, okay, her fear seizes her, and then what does she do? What is her reaction that moment when the doorknob rattles? I need a visceral reaction before she thinks this through. And to defend Wendy a tiny bit, this has happened. I guess we're not on the first line of the We're not on the first line of this, but I felt like I wanted a little bit more action, and I didn't really show you all up here. But I felt like there was a lacking here where the monster is doing things. There's a thought. The monster does things. There's another thought or a feeling. The monster does things. And it took a while to get to action. Just to be honest, I think that line, the locked doorknob rattles a few times, is a perfect first line. I think starting there and then having a really evocative visceral reaction is a great starting place. The rest of this is that you start there, and I'm so happy. I really like that idea because I felt like this was a lot of setup. a lot of setup
for getting me right into something that I cannot put down.
It just took a long time to get to action. That's all I'm saying. Okay, no, I like Heather's idea a lot. So if you started right here, then we're not taking a long time to get to the action, and then we're fine. And again, I don't know that I would even put this in a different order. I don't think that I would.
I don't know that you need to. It's really strong, but think about it. Just go through and make sure. Here's my thing. Do the tears, okay, the holding on tight, you've already given me a reaction. You don't have to reorder this. Because motivation followed by feeling, you used one thing to react. Then there's an action. That's her second part of her reaction.
This is probably,
and then the next thing is he's pulling her and she's holding on tight, right? So let's see.
This is a decision. I'm not going to let me see it cry. That's another
decision.
This is her reaction to her own decision.
Right, and actually she's doing that little dilemma moment. Right. Like, there are no options. I can't lock my door. The monster's always stronger. Right. Please leave me alone. She actually speaks.
So there you go.
This is brilliant.
Yeah,
this is really good. It's really evocative.
I was going to have you bring all this action up.
But actually, Nikki and I wanted to point out.
I like better cutting this and leaving the action where it is, actually.
Yeah, I agree. And something we talked about for this one is that we need to know for sure. If I start here, I don't think he's an actual monster.
We cannot.
Okay? But as you go further on and you have the next day, there's bruises and stuff, you still never tell me, I actually think it might be paranormal and they're literally monsters. And I don't think that's what you're going for.
But here's the thing.
But this doesn't pull me out as much. It was the opener that made me more into this monster world.
I thought I was in a fantasy for a little while, but here's the thing too.
Or
it's hard in a first chapter contest. In an actual first chapter with an actual experience of a reader, even an agent, they have read your query, or they've looked at the back cover, or they've looked at the cover of the book, and there are so many hints. They're going to know if this is a fantasy or a kind of a more of a gripping YA or adult. I assume YA, but
true. And we're totally fish out of water here. We have nothing.
You know what I mean? And so, in a contest, they will have nothing. So that's one thing to think of. But in a real, actual book,
that's true. They're going to have the cues. They're going to see on the back. So and so is abused. Blah blah blah. You're fine.
Okay.
And this is very evocative, and also keeps it from becoming so graphic and so difficult for me to handle.
I know, because it's a tough subject. Okay, we're going to go on to Sandy's. For this one, you do need a little bit of backstory. Sandy, I killed your formatting here again. I apologize. But in this one, we're not going to go a ton into the background. But what's the main character's name? Oh, Savina. So Savina can apparently sense or overhear, or somehow she is able to sense people's thoughts, read minds and feelings and all of that. And so she is kind of hidden, like in a bush, and she is sort of like, these people are walking by, and she is not only hearing their conversations, but when she wants to, she can kind of go digging in their mind and like see what's going on in there. Okay, so this is what she's overhearing. She's in a bush. I always knew he was a sneaky one, a woman said. It's about time we had some excitement around here. That last mercy killing was downright dull. Woven about the man's words, Savina felt the gleeful anticipation of blood and screaming. A ball of dread formed into her stomach. Savina closed her mind touch and listened only with her ears. You know, this is really small, but I'm going to put mind touch. Can you make that one word or hyphened? What do you think?
So that we're sure it's not
so that
error,
we just
so that we're sure it really is a
really
thing.
Feel that, and plus it just adds
the world building.
World building. So I'm going to just add that. And listened only with her ears. Pa says they'll fight. Pa says they'll start with his fingers, chopping them joint by joint, a young boy said. That's right, but that will only be the beginning, the man said. Let it be a lesson to you, lads, to work hard. Ma's so happy she said I could have a piece of sugar maple while we watched. Savina could hear his boyish bouncing on the road. She's sending Ona over early to get us a good spot. Along with you now, I've got to get my work done. The boy scampered off while the couple continued toward the center of the village. The offender must be a thief to start with his fingers like that. The glee she had felt from them surely meant he had stolen from Lord Tarek. So we're going to just, right now, we're going to label, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to say that all of that is the motivation.
Right.
Because it's the world something from the world happening to her.
Okay.
So then what have we got here? Ball of dread form.
Probably her feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Feeling followed by action.
I'm too worried about how I'm gonna write. I guess. Okay. Feeling. And then decision or action. Yeah. Decision, action. I mean, it's basically the same thing. right? Sometimes you have a formal, you state the decision, and then you do the action, because sometimes those are two separate things. Because sometimes you like, I'm going to open that door, but then you show her reaching and then falling before she can get to the door or whatever. You know what I mean? But generally, the decision and the action match.
Are the same.
They match, so you don't have to, spell it out both. First, I'm going to decide.
A lot of people do.
They do.
Don't do that.
Yeah. I decided to get up, so then I got up.
Everyone's like,
great. That's
struggling turn of events.
Okay. Pa says they'll start with his finger. That's right. Moss worked so hard along with you. I've got to get my work done. That is, in my opinion, all motivation.
Okay, it is, but part of the reason that you think that is because we don't have any emotional reactions from Sabina there, and this is a problem for me.
Well,
the moment that the young boy says they'll start with his fingers, chopping them joint by joint, I need something. I need some kind of beat there.
Unless it's really typical for that world. And some people like more, I think you like more visceral.
You watch through things.
You like to be watched through a little bit more. I like a drier, less present voice, and that's a stylistic choice. So it's no problem to put a visceral reaction here with they'll start with his fingers. If you just even have her tighten her own fingers or just some little thing.
Exactly. I would try to give her some, because I feel like she disappears as a POV character after the ball of dread forms. I feel like from that moment on, I don't know what Sabina really thinks about this. Clearly, she doesn't think it's good from the ball of dread, but then beyond that, there aren't any. I don't think emotional beats from her.
I will say that YA typically holds your hand a little bit more and has a very present main character and very present narrator. Whereas sometimes with adult work, and especially with literary work, you have a much more distant and cold narrator. So it's a style thing. It's what you want. Okay. The boys think, oh, actually, this is still part of motivation. I should have.
And then there's reaction there where she analyzes. She goes straight to analysis there.
I'm going to put all of that in this.
Which is another reason I would throw, I don't mind her going straight to analysis there if I had something in the middle of this grisly.
And here was the other problem. The way she was so cold about this, the offender must be a thief to start with his fingers like that. I actually
It does make you think it's very commonplace.
Yeah. Well, I lost who was, so this is thought. I lost who we were talking about for a little while. Pa says,
who the offender is.
Pa says they'll start with his fingers. I didn't realize
that's the offender's fingers when they do the execution.
This was something that I wanted. I wanted a better visual, and this our viewers can't see, but I wanted a better visual of who was there. Because when he says Pa says they'll start with his fingers, I thought Pa was
start with Pa's fingers.
Yeah, I was really confused. I thought Pa was in the group of people standing there.
I thought they were talking about an anticipated
execution. So he's referring to somebody who's not there, Pa, who is referring to the thief. So I think it would be really nice if you said Pa says they'll start with the thief's fingers, just for anybody
clarity, just for clarity, because we're so early on, we don't know.
Right, and I think it would be nice if you said there was a couple and one small boy.
Here's the other reason I want to beat from Sabina here. We don't know who she is. We don't have a sense of who she really is at this point. This is the first chapter. I need to know what her goals are. And clearly she's going through in the dark. I know.
Right. We get it.
I know. I get that. And she's going through in the dark and she's listening to theirs, but I don't have a strong sense of her goal here.
Yeah.
I don't have a strong sense of what exactly, like, is she trying to save the thief? What is her purpose here other than eavesdropping?
This is thought. But it does give us a sense of her feeling, and it's the first time we've really gotten a sense of her feeling. I mean, well, I guess we have the ball of dread formed into her stomach, but again, that could just be like maybe they're going to catch her. Do you know what I mean? Because up until this point, I was worried, like, oh, they're going to see her. They're going to see her.
We might need some analysis between the feeling and the action.
Oh, totally. Because I felt like she was reacting to the situation of being hidden. So what is she reacting to? No, she's reacting to the fact that they're talking about a killing. So I felt like we needed thought here.
I think so.
Just a little bit.
So then that would go in between the feeling and the action.
Yeah, so I felt like we needed a little bit between the feeling and the action.
In between the feeling and the action.
Oh, sorry, you're right. You're right. Absolutely.
The ball of dread is where we have that initial feeling, and then she has to analyze for us, so we know why. Is she closing the mind touch? Because I wondered this while I was reading.
Why she was closing.
Is her mind touch something that they can sense?
Yeah,
and is that why the ball of dread is forming?
Yeah, I wanted to know. I wanted to know why she had that feeling, And then I keep pointing at them. I keep pointing
Look at this.
Like as if they're going to see
Look at this. No, wait, they can't even see it at all. Yay.
But anyway, we're gonna. I think this might have to be our last one. I feel really bad because I do want to keep it to an hour, and then we will make sure that we get to all of these next time. We will make the checklist super short.
That's going to be the main point.
And it will be
get to the samples.
We will make sure that we get to these. So, Sandy, to finish up with this one though, I felt like if you could give us a better visual of who's there. I don't mind that there's some blockiness. I don't want to react to every single line of dialogue.
I don't either. But I need at least one to tell me what her point is there.
Right.
Otherwise you're hiding it from me.
In fact, you know what you could do for me? You could cut this line and put it here, because then we can have all of that.
Yes, and then as long as you analyze why we have a ball of dread, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
I just need to know what her point is there. She's sneaking through this thing at great danger to herself that you pointed out at the beginning.
Right. Yeah. We assume that there's lots of danger there.
Well, we said it in the top that she will die if she's caught. They said that in the front.
But we don't know why. We don't know if it's because of the mind thing or if
And don't, you know what, here's something I just want to toss out there that's not part of our beats thing at all. Don't hide your stuff. Yes, there are reveals that are important reveals, but like this is information that when she's thinking about it, when she's experiencing it, we need to have if we're in her mind.
And the thing is, we want to be thinking, how is she going to get out of this situation? What is this situation?
Exactly.
That is not what we want at all.
Especially in the first chapter.
Right. So, but Sandy, you're like so close. You're like
I love it.
You're
I'm super excited
away
about
from being just like just where it needs to be.
And it's super creepy too.
Here's one thing that I will say. When Pa says they'll start with his thief's fingers, if you have some feeling here and some thought and some action and all of that, and you have a big gap between dialogue A and then the response to dialogue A, you might have to do some added words. So you might say, that's right, but his fingers will only be the beginning.
Right.
To kind of just
get back to where we are. Make sure the antecedents are all
because
present.
this might end up being a paragraph or several sentences or whatever, and so you do want to like throw the reader a little bone, especially in the first chapter. Again, you can get away with little stuff like that in chapter 15 because we're really grounded where we are, who we are, who's
what everybody needs in the scene.
There. But when we're starting out, we want to really handhold a lot. And then I am totally fine with this having not been
agreed, as long as we have some analysis before.
Yeah, I love that.
Yep.
And then here, the offender must be a thief to start with his fingers like that. I like it. She is a little colder. She is less willing to cough up her emotional feelings for us every second. And I don't mind that at all. So
and you're going just right on. This end sample moment is not where you're ending at all. You're coming right on with other things, and you are getting into it's a gruesome business and all the rest. So I think we're good to stop.
I was going to skip to Marcus's, but Marcus, I'm going to stop because I think we'll be able to cover it better if we cover it next week. So let's go ahead and stop. Let's just check really fast, see if we have.
And go back to take the share screen off.
Oh yeah, let's take the share screen off.
Because I want them to look at our
beautiful faces. Right? Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Her motivation is to keep her fingers. Yeah, seriously. But it wasn't her fingers that were going to be chopped off. It was the thief. No, but I know that was hard to understand because we only got to read the first part and you guys didn't get to read that. So, okay. Hey, you read that motivation. You read that check report. Good job, Michael. Okay, I'm going to, we're going to count. We have 6 watching. We're going to do a random number. Don't tell them what it is.
I'm not telling them. I screwed that up last time.
Because some people show up. The comments show up in different order. So one guy was like, oh, I win. And then I was like, oh,
crap. No.
You're just going to have to trust us on this one.
We promise we're being
Heather
honest.
will verify for me. Okay.
There's a number that has been revealed.
It's so hard not to say it. Okay. Oh, my husband.
Her husband wins.
Gianna King wins. Gianna King. Welcome. Yay, I'm so excited. Okay, we will see you all next week. And if there are any questions, I will address them in our follow-up. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're almost done.
So excited. Casey, yeah.